Good morning, everybody. God's land down under here. Brett coming to you from Tasmania at 27 minutes past 10 in the AM on the 23rd. So we've made it to the 23rd. I imagine in Israel it's around 3:30 in the morning or something. Nothing's happened on the 23rd with all the programming. However, I knew today would be a buzz. The YouTube community would be a buzz with the information that the channel Worship and Watch came out with yesterday. I'm watching End Time Dream and Vision at the moment, and they've done a little clip on the same thing. They put it out 24 minutes ago. I picked up on this yesterday and put out a clip, I think, basically because most of the other Watchman channels were in the sleeping hours, so we picked up on it early here in Australia. But basically, this is incredible information, and I'm not sure why we haven't picked up on this before. To me, it's just another example of how, Daniel was told to seal up the books and that come back to, they'd be reopened in these days, greater understanding, man travelling to and fro, knowledge abounding, that sort of stuff. And this can only be an example of that prophecy because, on the surface, when you look at this, it was well researched for sure by Worship and Watch, but it was fairly available information. I'm surprised some of the channels haven't picked up on it before. I didn't, of course, but it's just funny how these things are sort of becoming brought to the forefront of our attention right now, in a way that you can only say is, the book of Daniel coming back to life, being unsealed, greater knowledge in these end days. So, anyway, back to where I was, sorry. This is fantastic information. Basically, as I mentioned yesterday, in 1922, the League of Nations put in place a document whereby on September 29th, 1923, in the Transjordan area, there was an establishment for the Jewish people to come back home. That then, according to Leviticus, started the count for Jubilees. Oh, bully, hold on a sec. Just let me dog out. Let's go. There's always a dog bothering a video, and always an owner hoping their pets are going to be raptured with them. But anyway, so that started a count for the Jubilees, which meant in 1973 at the Yom Kippur War was the first Jubilee, and this 2023 period that we're in now is in fact another Jubilee. And that Jubilee, according to the date of the document provided in this clip, is September 29th. Now, that is a very interesting date, and there's some more support for that date, and I'll explain that in a moment. I'll just play a bit of this clip for those who haven't seen it yet, so you can get a bit of an idea of what it all means. You'll hear End Times Dream and Visions, I think the channel's full name is, isn't it? Yeah, you'll see a little bit of input. You'll hear a little bit of input, which is good, and we'll talk a bit more after I pause it.
Here's the other thing, though. The mandate required Britain to put into effect the Balfour Declaration's national home for the Jewish people alongside the Palestinian Arabs. Right here. This is what it says. This is what the mandate of 1922. That was when it was written, but this is the date it became effective. So this day, September 29th, 1923, is when this, right here, this paragraph, all of it, but especially this paragraph, went into effect.
So the Balfour Declaration was put together in 1917 but did not go into effect until 5 years later in 1923.
When do you start counting sabbatical years? And you start counting sabbatical years when you come into the land the Lord is giving you. Okay, so this, and we have the Balfour Declaration of 1917, right? That was basically when they said, we're gonna do this, okay? But this right here, this is when it went into effect, okay? September 29th, 1923. So if that's when the count for Jubilee years began.
See that? Now since they're back in the land, they can start counting all over again. Everybody tries to go all the way back to 27 AD counting Jubilees, but Israel stopped counting Jubilee years after 70 AD when they were exiled from Israel. So Jubilees were no longer in effect because they were no longer in the land. But as soon as they came back into the land, they had to start counting the Jubilees all over again. Basically, it just reset the clock. And like he's pointing out right here, according to his document, the clock did not start ticking with Jubilee years until 1923. And since the clock started ticking in September 1923, 50 years later, what happened? The Yom Kippur War. 1973, the next Jubilee year.
Then what does that mean? It means 1973, the Yom Kippur War, which a lot of the watchmen were already kind of on that. We're already looking at that. Yes, that was a Jubilee year. And what does that make 2023? Yes, a Jubilee year, 50 years later. Not only that, I was one that was on 2030, right? But the situation is, with 2030, that's the second coming and everything else, right? But that's technically, that would be the start of another sabbatical count. Understand? I know that Jesus declared the Jubilee when he was doing his ministry in AD 27, or if you want to believe 28 or what have you, he declared a Jubilee. But then remember, before 50 years were up, in AD 70, the temple was destroyed and the Jews were kicked out by the Roman Empire and everything else. So there wasn't another Jubilee until they got this right here in September 29th, 1923.
I'll just pause that there. You get the general picture. The best thing to do is have a look at End Time Dream and Vision, who summarised the clip, or go to the original, which is Worship and Watch. But anyway, basically we have fair confirmation there that the Jubilee, the anniversary date is the 29th of September. That brings me along to the main couple of other timelines that we're looking at, which are Repo Mans and Cool Cats, which are, I think, the 24th for Repo Man and the 26th or something like that for Cool Cat. However, we did have Ty Green thrown into the mix. Now, the way Ty Green came up with the 29th is biblically, but also researching sort of rabbinical documents and history, I think. And he identified that there were only certain days, apparently, that they were able to call the Feast of Trumpets on. And in fact, Tuesday, the 19th, was one of those. So he looked at 10 days after that, the Day of Atonement being the 29th. Now that's interesting. That also lines up nicely with the Jubilee. But it also lines up very nicely with the full moon that we have on the 29th. And that could be significant also. Now, whilst I don't like looking at the outside dates, I think currently we have more support for the 29th than we do the 24th or the 26th. What that means, I don't know. I'm certainly watching every day from now forward. But, yeah, it could well be that we've got to go to the 29th. Now, a lot of people are starting to mention dates in October now, and they're relating it to this emergency alert thing that's going on in America. Just forget about that. If that's anything significant, it's not for the bride. I'm telling you, we're not having those emergency alerts here in Australia, and unless USA is the entire world, which it isn't, I can't see that being significant. It might be significant for the elites, or if the raptures happen, for something after the event, but it's not for us. And now we've got people looking at Mayan calendars, and we've got people looking at Zelensky's calendar and using things on that calendar as start dates. And I mean, this is getting crazy. Come on. Zelensky? Really? Like, he obviously, end times, all the governmental heads around the world are probably involved in this to one degree or another, but like, we can't be setting end times rapture dates based on Vladimir Zelensky or whatever his stupid name is. We can't be setting dates based on his calendar that people have found online just because he's making a few tweets about them. I mean, if that were the case, we ought to be looking at Donald Trump's son's account being hacked and just about everybody else that sort of has something strange go on one of their accounts on the internet. I'm certainly not looking at Zelensky. No doubt he's involved in all this. I mean, that's as clear as glass, but I wouldn't be looking for rapture dates based on anything to do with people like him. Or Mayan calendars. I mean, in 2012, I think it was, we were all that was the end of the world then based on the Mayan calendar, and that didn't work out so great. But anyway, have a look at Ty Green, because we've got three convergences. We've got like three witnesses for the 29th, if you like. We have the moon, the full moon. We've got Ty Green's interpretation as to when Feast of Trumpets started, and therefore when the Day of Atonement is, which is the 29th. Now we have this information about the Jubilee and its anniversary being September the 29th. Very interesting. Like I said, I did not pay too much heed to this 23rd that's been programmed into movies, etc., although the 23rd isn't over yet, obviously. That's just how Satan works, eh? Throw out all the fake alarms so that we get desensitized to the point where we either stop watching or just see everything as another false flag. Just where the term "boy who cried wolf" came from. It's pretty obvious that that's the tactic that's been used here. Anyway, remember, we keep watching until Jesus comes, but I wouldn't be disheartened at all regarding this watch time frame or this watch period. I wouldn't be disheartened until we got to the 29th. If we get to the 29th, then I guess we're going to need to start doing some serious reevaluation, and I have no idea where we would go beyond that point other than to simply wait on the Lord and wait for it to happen, because I can't see any of these sorts of alignments happening again. Certainly not, we're not going to get a 7-year SDG thing come up, again in the near future. I think they do meet again next year in 2024, but that's 12 months away. That's a long time. We don't have the alignments, etc., that we see in Virgo. We don't have the Jubilee. We don't have the Feast of Trumpets. We don't have all of these things in play anymore when we go past this point. So to sort of look at the jigsaw puzzle, we'd need to shake all the pieces out and start again. And I'm not too sure how we'd go about that. But anyway, keep watching. Don't be disheartened until we know for certain and we're past this next period. We should be very expectant and prepared to hear the trumpet any moment. Remember, though, Jesus' works were perfect, unblemished, beautiful, pure white. Our best works are but filthy rags.